Welcome to Grassroots from the Nursing Now Challenge, a programme of the Burdett Trust for Nursing. Grassroots aims to amplify the voices of nurses and midwives driving change from the ground up. We're shining a light on how nurses and midwives are shaping the future of healthcare, often in the most challenging of circumstances. This week, we talk to Lucy Osborn, a PhD nursing candidate from Australia, to find out what it means to be a nurse advocate and use your voice to influence policy and drive change. In conversation with Lucy are Tsungpo Aaron Huang, a nurse researcher from Taiwan and Challenges Committee Regional Hub Lead for the Western Pacific, and Sana Gul, a postgraduate midwifery student at the University of Birmingham in the UK and Challenges Committee co-chair.
Hello and welcome to Grassroots. I'm Aaron, the Western Pacific Hub Lead for the Nursing Now Challenge and a research assistant at National Yangming Jiao Tong University in Taiwan. I am joined today by my co-host Sana.
Hi everyone, my name is Sana and I am co-hosting today with Arun. I'm a nurse and a student midwife and co-chair of Nursing Now program.
So today we will be exploring the power of advocacy and how young nurse leaders can create meaningful structural change. We are delighted to welcome Lucy Osborn, an active member of the Nursing Now Challenge, a clinical nurse educator in paediatric emergency, and former chair of the Next Generation faculty at the Australian College of Nursing. Lucy, it's such a pleasure to have you with us. Could you start by introducing yourself?
Thank you for having me. It's very exciting to be here. I come from an interesting mix of background in nursing. I'm slowly but surely making my way out of the early career stage of my nursing and moving more towards the mid-career. But my very short career so far has included a variety of different roles, including bedside nursing in emergency and neonatal intensive care units, as well as doing education and supportive positions. One of my favourite parts of being a nurse is the diversity of roles that you can have. So whilst I've also been working in the clinical environment, I've worked for multiple universities supporting undergraduates and now postgraduate students in their studies as well. And I am doing my PhD. I have a postgrad in paediatric emergency nursing specialising in newborns and an honours of research. So my PhD has come off the back of figuring out that research is a really important part of nursing as well. So I think it's a testament to how diverse your career can be, even in such a short amount of time when you're a nurse.
Could you talk to us a little bit more about the Australian College of Nursing and the Emerging Nurse Leader program?
So the Australian College of Nursing is a professional body. It represents the nursing profession within Australia, and you don't have to be a member of the Australian College. It's something that you choose to be. So it currently represents a small portion with its membership. However, it does advocate for all nursing professionals within Australia. The Emerging Nurse Leadership program is one of the many facets that they have within their leadership series, but it is focused solely on early career nurses. So you can start in this program actually as a student nurse, and then it supports you up until your 6th year of practice. It's a self-driven program, so it's for people who are keen to learn and to grow and to see what nursing can hold for them, as well as leadership in nursing. And it's something that was genuinely career-changing for me. I was introduced to the Emerging Nurse Leader program in my final year of nursing, and by the time I had applied, I was accepted in when I was doing my graduate year, so my first year of practice in Australia. And without it, I wouldn't have had the career that I've had. Every job that I have had is a direct result of the Australian College of Nursing and the network and the learnings that it has provided for me. So you are given a list of activities that the Australian College, otherwise known as ACN, will support you to do. And these are things like getting a formal mentor, supernumerary days in roles that you're not yet experienced enough to do, but it helps you get the experience and the understanding of what those roles do. Things like writing for their journals and their publications, as well as presenting at conferences and being leaders in their membership. They call them faculties. So there are heaps of other options that the Emerging Nurse Leader program gives you to do, and it's up to you to choose what's going to be most beneficial to you. I met the most amazing early career nurses in each stage that I was in, and I am so lucky to have those peers that are growing with me and support me in so many different ways. And beyond that, I was so lucky to be put in touch with 6 different mentors, a new one each year, that I still keep in contact with and that support me to be the best that I can be and make really well-adjusted and informed decisions. So my favourite part of the Emerging Nurse Leadership Program was the network that I created. And I'm really thankful because, as I said, all of my jobs came from this network. I mentioned at a conference that I was really interested in paediatric nursing, and 2 weeks later I was moving to Melbourne from South Australia and starting at the Royal Children's Hospital. I was at an event a couple of years later where I asked a question to the panel about what we're teaching in the universities, and someone asked if I was interested in teaching, and that's how I started teaching. So all of these things that came from being courageous and asking questions and talking to people just led me to having this amazing platform that I have today. It's very well supported.
And I love that the things that you put out there, it somehow echoes back. Because when I was doing some initial search, I found the blog that you wrote a while ago, The Scrubs That Fit. Can you talk to us a little bit about what inspired you to do that?
Yeah, it's actually a very interesting story. So I was never a writer, and all of my English teachers from all of my high school and primary school even would say to me, you will never be a writer. It's just not something. I've got a lot of skills, but writing's not one of them. And I was like, all right, whatever. When I started this Emerging Nurse Leader program, I needed a way to push my self-reflection beyond something that I was comfortable with. So I started writing like a blog, almost in diary form. And I had someone reading over my shoulder at the nurse's station on a night shift being like, you know what, I think a lot of people would actually really resonate with what you've written here. Like, would you be interested in sharing it? And I was like, oh my God, no, like I'm not a writer. Later that day, that night shift, I was looking about ways to get a few more points for the E&L program. And one of them was submit to the publications. And I was like, oh, should I? Like, I'm a bit nervous. I've never really had anyone read my writing before. But I was brave. I took some courageous steps and I submitted one of my articles, and the ACN felt the same. They felt that this was something that could really resonate, and next thing I know, I had a whole blog that I could just write whatever I wanted to. And I was like, you just forget that people are experiencing things at the same time as you. Like our experiences are different, but some of the themes and the learnings are much the same, and it can be really important to hear it from a peer. That what you're going through, you're not going through alone. So I got a little bit more confident with each article that was written. I had some fantastic support in terms of editing from the ACN. There were times where I would write an absolute mess and say, I love the theme that I have here, but I just can't work out how to put it on paper, and got some really amazing feedback. So I certainly don't take all of the credit in terms of how it was written and how the final product came out, but I am really proud to say that I shared the first probably 3 years of my career with honesty and authenticity, and that the feedback that I got from my colleagues who were reading them were really positive. So it happened by being a little bit brave and a little bit vulnerable, and doing something that, even though I didn't think it was my skill, just giving it a go. And the Emerging Nurse Leader program definitely gave me the courage and the platform to be able to do that.
I love that so much, because like looking back when I was navigating through like the early career stages, like just starting as a novice nurse, I find myself really resonate somehow with the things that you wrote in that blog, which I find is very inspiring.
I would be wondering, because I'm an early career nurse myself, as you said that you were a little bit nervous in the beginning that to submit or no. Many of the early career nurses, probably some of them wants to write like you did, but we also have the constraints of shift work, the routine is not same. How did you find it difficult in the beginning, and what constraint did you personally had, and how did you got around them?
There were a few challenges and a few conflicting things that I needed to balance. When I was in my very early career, I was a single person with no kids. So my outside of work expectations were a little lower, which is very handy. But what I did was I found a way to make it a part of my everyday practice. So something that I learned from one of my therapists when I was, just talking about different ways to improve my mood and my well-being was talking about a gratitude journal. And I made it a part of that practice. So just reflecting on my day, taking elements of gratitude from each day, and then being able to reflect on things like that. So when I had key issues or really exciting wins from those days, I wrote them down and remembered them as things that I could expand on for articles with that. So there were times where I would write in the middle of a night shift because we had some downtime and I needed to stay awake anyway, so I may as well be doing something productive. And then there were times where I just get a flurry of energy at home and just enjoy the process of reliving some of the events or be healed by reflecting on them and by growing from things that didn't go as well as they should have done. So I think the best way to overcome some of those issues is by trying to make it a part of your everyday practice. I mean, it's so healing to be able to reflect on your day, leave it at work, which can be a really important part. Like, I'm not saying bring everything home and write about it at home, but whether you can put it into your day as part of your professional development, it's something that people could potentially consider after handing over their patients and things like that before going on break, so that we're making sure that when we have resting time that we're actually recharging, not just resting.
That's very good examples, Lucy. And I think what you said, that the practice that you started in your personal life and then it turns into a habit of writing professionally and then you get it published. Once you published your blog, which your colleague just gave you the idea, and then of course you had the requirement for one of the applications and then you just went for it and it was amazing. Once your workplace, your colleague read it, published, what was the how did they react it? What was the impact on your workplace, around your colleagues? Did anybody came to you and said, wow, that's amazing, I want to do same? Like, how did it go?
When I started writing this, I was actually still in my graduate year, so still in my first year of practice, and the ward that I was working on were really supportive, and they liked me as a person, as a grad, as a nurse. They liked the energy that I brought to the shift and my willingness to learn. So they were very supportive and they really liked to see what I was writing and hear about what I was doing. And even still, I get messages from them. I recently did a keynote speech at the National Nurses Forum, and I had some of my old colleagues from this workplace in the audience, and they were very, very supportive and just loved to see me thriving and enjoying what I was doing. I don't come to a workplace and say, look at everything that I've done, because I feel that imposter syndrome, and I feel like, that's not in the nature of a nurse, which I don't necessarily agree with, but I do still feel a bit funny about it. So there's been times where I've worked with someone for a couple of years and then one day it's just clicked and they're like, oh my goodness, I've read your work. I didn't know that was you, that we were still working together. I had no idea that this was you that wrote it until they saw me in a picture or something like that. I guess I should not be so shy about resharing it. To me it feels like a little bit old, but it's been a really positive thing that when I share it with people, they've enjoyed it, and I still get emails that people are reading it and that they're liking it and they want to see more of it. So, yeah, it's a funny feeling because, again, it's not something that I ever thought I'd really be doing, and not something that I feel naturally that good at, but I have enjoyed the process.
That's amazing that you have that support and then that appreciative environment that people you're working with. Lucy, I can resonate with you when we do something nice and it just feels that surreal that we did it. But the hardest part comes to keep the momentum going. Like, how do we keep doing it, and how do we, sometimes, the times comes where we feel like I had enough, I can't do all of it. But you have to keep the momentum going, to keep inspiring, and then the next generation of nurses, I say the student nurses, would see that we have more to, we can do more than what we are asked to do, basically. So how do you cope up with this irregular shifts and all the workload, but also wants to the set that, because you set the bar high now, like how do you keep up with that work?
I think the first thing to acknowledge is that you can't do it all. And, that was a bit of a hard lesson for me to learn in probably my third year, is when I started to get a bit tired and the energy levels were running low. I am a huge advocate for work-life balance, and, if work is what keeps you balanced in terms of like writing and being creative and or learning, for a lot of people, learning is something that they like to do in their spare time, something I like to do. Then that's fantastic, but it's not for everybody. In terms of keeping the momentum going, you're not going to be able to do that if you're burning yourself out. So finding that work-life balance, finding what makes you tick, what makes you excited, what gives you your internal motivation to do these things and to make it work. So I had a couple of years where I was a little bit quiet on the volunteering front with the ACN. I was still doing things, but not to the same standard that may have been expected from me in the past. And now that my son's a little bit older and is at kinder a couple of days a week, I have a bit more time to give back to the community now. So, I took my rest time and now I can give it back again. So, yeah, we've been working really hard in the background to do some more things. But your life is going to come in waves, and there's going to be times where you're full of energy and you're going to take advantage of that. But there's also going to be times where you've got other priorities that you need to put your energy into. So just being okay with that was a big thing for me to learn. And, I'm really proud of myself that I've been able to do that.
Thank you, Lucy. We are proud of you as well. There were some amazing inspirational stories, and also tips you gave, especially to our listeners who are early career nurses or student nurses, that self-care is the key. Like, we have to take care of ourselves, not to burn out, so we can keep going. That was amazing. The another important thing that you mentioned, which I would reiterate to our listeners, the planning. If you want to do, you have to plan, and it will eventually work out. So it shows the diversity of the roles nurses can do. You worked in research, you developed a strategy, you did project management. You worked in academics. These are diverse roles nurses can work in. And I think there were some amazing key messages that you gave. And of course, at the end, just be okay when you cannot give it. Just give yourself a break. I think this is the hardest thing when we're working so hard and we have so much passion, and sitting idle and giving ourselves is the hardest part. But that is okay, because it's our time to recharge and then come back and do it again.
Speaking of PhD research, could you share a little bit more about the project that you're working on?
Yeah, I started this project just before I fell pregnant, and have been able to continue it on and almost restart it, which has been really nice. But I am looking at how we assess clinical competence in registered nurses. So not how competent someone is, but how we assess them. And this is something that came from personal experience as a registered nurse, where I was working in 2 departments within one hospital, and I was allowed to do one skill in one area, but not in the other. And my scope of practice was restricted based on policies that were made by non-clinical people, anyone that wasn't working as a nurse on the floor, basically. So there was a whole lot of red tape, and no one could really figure out where it had come from or why it had happened. So it came from having to do multiple competence assessments to prove something that I was already capable of doing and had proved in another area. From that, I realised that it's actually a can of worms, and it's very political, and a lot of people have a lot of differing opinions on this, and there are actually other professions that are trying to match what nursing is doing, where I'm like, oh, I wonder if we should be moving away from this. So it's really interesting to see that there are so many diverse opinions about where it's come from, but a lot of it has come from when we moved away from hospital-based training and started our university training. So there's a lot of history that I've needed to work through to kind of understand what, how and why. I'm actually filling the research gap of what nurses think. What are our perceptions of competence assessment? Are they fit for practice? Are we using them well? Are they a good opportunity to learn, or are they just a little tick box to say, yeah, they're safe? Are we assessing competence over acuity, over time, or are we assessing competence just in the moment on a mannequin? Are we actually fit for purpose? And that's what I'm looking at based on nurses' perceptions, because no one's asked us yet. No one's asked what nurses think and how we perceive these tools. So it's one of those things that I am very passionate about, raising the collective voices of nursing. So it makes a lot of sense that my research would be grounded in making nurses' voices heard about things that directly affect us, because at the end of the day, we're the end user from the assessment to the assessee.
I find that so fascinating, not necessarily like a paradigm shift, but the subjective experience changes from when we are student nurses to when we are like working staff nurses in the clinical field, or when we are clinical educators looking at like the teaching, the assessing of students or just clinical staffs. What did you learn about yourself during like this process?
That I'm pretty resilient. I think most people who start a PhD learn that nothing is linear and you have to be really resilient to get to the end. And I'm not at the end yet, but I'm not too far away, hopefully a maximum of 18 months away. There are times where you feel like you've started from the beginning. You feel like a whole 2 years of work has been wasted. And that's just your perception at the time of what's happening around you. But basically, I found my whole first year of my PhD was learning about philosophy. I mean, it's a doctor of philosophy, and putting your own perception of the world into a category, basically, and figuring out what paradigm, what theoretical framework you are going to assess your findings with. And I suppose as nurses, we're not all that prepared to take on the philosophy side of a PhD. It's not something that people generally talk about when you hear them talking about their PhD work, because they're presenting the findings that can either make a change or identify a research gap, rather than talking about the philosophical challenges that come early on. So after my first year of nursing, my PhD, I felt like I didn't know anything. And I felt like everything that I had come in with, all my preconceived ideas, were just gone. And that's the whole idea. It's supposed to challenge your thought process. It's supposed to make you look internally and assess your biases and things like that. So all of the work that I had done in my first year, I was like, I can't use this. It doesn't flow with my theoretical framework. There are gaps in what I've written. But my supervisors, who are absolutely amazing, and please don't start a PhD without amazing supervisors, because it would be very, very difficult. So huge props to my supervisors. They just sat down with me and were like, none of this is wasted. You just need to fill in the gaps. You need to relate this back to everything that you've now learned, and you can reuse it. So I probably had like 10,000 words of different articles and things ready to go. Well, I thought they were ready to go. And then I had my whole paradigm shift, my whole brain shift, and was worried that it was all going to go to waste. But I've been able to relook at it, come at it with a critical lens, and now they are so much more powerful than what they were before, because they're grounded in theory and not just in thought.
I absolutely agree with that, because when I did my master, and it's just stepping into the ontological, epistemological, all those research philosophy terms, it feels like entering a whole new world, which at the time I didn't know whether I want to enter or not. But now, absolutely, I enjoy research, and I'm a researcher by heart. What would be your advice for, like say, early career nurses that want to get involved with research?
My first bit of advice is research really is the future. Like, there's no progressing as healthcare professionals without research. We owe every bit of advancement and piece of knowledge to someone who's done research. So there's a few different reasons to start a PhD. One of them is the pursuit of knowledge, which is why I'm doing one. I really enjoy learning. I've enjoyed the learning side of the PhD more so than the outcomes that are going to come from my PhD. I mean, I'm hoping they'll be fantastic, but I've actually enjoyed the journey, which is not what a lot of people say. I think the other reason to do a PhD for a lot of people is if they want to work in research or academia. And again, that's not for everyone. A lot of people get into nursing because they want the bedside part of nursing. They want to be that healing hand, to be that voice, to be that advocate. And research does that, but in a different way. So I think it's a fantastic avenue within nursing, and my advice is if you are interested in it, give it a go. And especially in Australia, because it's a really low risk thing to do, because we don't pay fees to study a PhD. The government pays our fees. You can also get a living allowance on top of that. So if it's something that you start and you're like, it's not actually for me, I might be better in a more structured program like a Masters of Research or an Honours of Research, or even just like a Masters of Advanced Practice Nursing or NP, for example, then you can stop and you haven't lost anything other than a bit of time. So I think if you're considering it, absolutely go for it. You don't need to be at a particular part in your career to start. I started mine when I was 27. I took a couple of years off to have my baby and came back to it. So there's no experience level that you need to have. You just need to be thirsty to learn and to want to add to high quality research. So I think my advice to anyone who's considering it is find some amazing supervisors, find some amazing mentors and talk to them, and find some people that will guide you down a really lovely path of exploration and learning.
I'm loving the conversation. I really want to sit here all day and listen to you, Lucy. That was amazing. I would like to little bit touch about the constitutional reform, about the white paper development that you did. Can you tell us, our listeners, a bit more about that?
Absolutely. This is something that we've been working on for a little while now, and unfortunately it is still in progress, but I am more than happy to share where we're up to. So as the chair of the Next Gen faculty, which I've recently handed over to the very capable Caitlin Moore, we as a leadership team decided that it just wasn't good enough that the ACN's constitution and board directors didn't have any diversity on it. They don't have a recognised chair for First Nations people, which is very important in Australia. Closing the gap is something that we're still very much working towards. Nor do they have a next-gen voice on their board or within their leadership. So it was something that we talked about being a high priority. So we put together a proposal of how that they could do this and presented it to their board and to their top-tier leadership members, and were successful in driving that change. So at the moment we're looking at how we need to reword the Constitution to ensure that there is a designated chair for First Nations people, and how we can prepare Next Gen to have a voice on the board. So whether or not that looks like a designated chair on the board, or whether that looks like a mentorship program called Bedside to Board. And what this would do, it would give nurses the opportunity throughout their career to learn the skills that is needed to be an efficient member of the board. So by the time they finish this program, they're able to be on the board. In Australia, it's more and more common now to need formal education, often through the Australian Institute of Company Directors, but that's a really expensive course. It's about $10,000 Australian. I can't afford that, and I'm certainly not going to do it just to be a volunteer on a board. So how can we prepare nurses who are willing to donate their time to be a board member without it being a huge financial burden for them? So this is something that we're looking at doing within the organisation of ACN. So it will be part of their leadership offering. So part of the E&L program, Nurse to Board, will sit in there. They've got a mid-career leadership program, a nurse unit manager program, and an executive nurse program. And within those, they help develop the skills that are needed for each of those roles, because beyond this, there's actually not any formal training for management in nursing. You're expected to go from a bedside nurse to an assistant nurse manager or a nurse unit manager without any formal training. So they're just really filling that gap there, which is fantastic. That is one of the things that we're doing, which is changing the constitution to have a protected First Nations voice, and then working towards the bedside to boardroom program. The white paper came from, we put on a Next Gen summit at the beginning of the National Nurses Forum, that is the ACN's signature conference. And in this time, we were hearing from our members so many of the same issues that they were having, things like non-flexible work arrangements, really poor retention with their workmates, unsafe working practices, and people just at the edge of burnout. And, coming to these conferences to be rejuvenated so they can get through the rest of the year, which is just not something that I want to see in the nursing profession. So we took all the data that we got from this, did an informal literature review, and realised there is a huge need to modify what we're doing to fit the next generation of nurses. So the quote I've been using is change the profession to fit the professionals. And it's something that sounds so obvious when you say it like that, but at nursing we're not very good at changing the status quo. So we are currently still writing the white paper, but basically we will present it to Parliament with a solutions-based focus on how we can ensure next-gen nurses stay in nursing, and not just that, stay happy and healthy in nursing. So we expect it to be a really amazing piece, and we've got the ACN's policy team helping us with that as we speak, but hopefully it'll be something that drives change and something that can be modelled by other countries as well. So if they see that we're doing something really fantastic for next-gen nurses to drive retention, hopefully that they can use the same things that we're using or similar things in their cultural context to drive changes in their countries as well.
I mean, amazing. This is something like I think is a need every country, as you said, because staffing problems, motivating next generation to come into nursing and then stay and thrive, that support that they would need alongside from bedside to boardroom, and not necessarily leaving the bedside to reach the boardroom. In many countries, you can do both together. You can be a boardroom full time, and you can do half part time in the bedside. I think the possibilities are unlimited in nursing, but that recognition, that support, that career ladder, as you said, are, I think, important, and that's where it's missing. So to changing the profession to fit the professionals is just what you said is amazing. Nursing Now Challenge is somewhere kind of doing something similar, like to influence change, to educate for the professional identity, and then to challenge that status quo, which you just said is very, very difficult to do, and that too on a global scale. Now, you are a member of Nursing Now program as well. How did you find out about Nursing Now Challenge? Why did you want to become a member? And how the work of the Nursing Now you think is similar to the work you have been doing, and what is different, and what we can do more within Nursing Now to influence that change?
I was put onto the Nursing Now Challenge through the ACN because ACN is a partner, and I have been a part of the Challenges Committee since its inception. So I've seen it go from, its tiny little starting seed and blossom into this amazing program. What I'm doing with the ACN is something that the Challenges and the Nursing Now program will definitely benefit from, because it's something that we can share. And as I said, ACN being a partner, it's directly able to come across and be used in other contexts. So I don't think there's any difference between what I'm doing with them and what I can do with you guys. It started in this way because I knew that I had the platform and the network to start in Australia. Whereas, like you've mentioned, it can be really hard to challenge these things when you don't have that support and platform behind you. So my idea when we started this was something that we could do within Australia, model it, practice it, make sure it works, and then expand it through the Nursing Now Challenge. So this is something that I've worked with different people within Nursing Now to get off the ground and have different opinions and expert opinions on. So I've worked with Deborah Toms, who is the board director for the Western Pacific region, and I work quite closely to her. I was actually just speaking to her about the Bedside to Boardroom program. This is the type of thing that this program is amazing for, is making those connections and being able to spread what you're learning across such a diverse community quickly, which is not something that we've really ever had before, is once you find something that works, being able to spread it quickly and with energy and to other people that hold the same passions that you do.
What would you say to a nurse or a midwife listening to this podcast who sees a problem but feels powerless to change it?
Find like-minded people to support you in making a change. This is a question that I get asked quite a bit, and I think it's a really important question because, you know, it does really come from that grassroots, that really foundational thing that happens in nursing. We often see those problems, but we don't know where to start and how to fix it and whether we're the right person to be even challenging it. If you take an example of finding something in your department that needs to be challenged or changed, or there's a bit of conflict, talk to your managers, talk to senior nurses, talk to people, talk to peers, talk to doctors, talk to allied health, talk to the people around you. Identify if it's a problem for other people too, because more than likely it's going to be. Find the people that share the same ideas as you, get advice from all different angles and really understand what it looks like to the community of nurses that you're working with. There's power in numbers when you're trying to take a challenge on, and there's always the opportunity to work together, to have a collective voice, to bring it to the people who can make a change. So as a bedside nurse, we don't often have the power to be able to change our rostering system or our shift times and things, but there is someone who can. Because at the end of the day, there is someone who can make these decisions, but we need to find out who that person is, find out the reasoning behind the system that is currently in place, and then bring forth a new solution. So never bring up a challenge or an issue without some idea of what a solution could look like. You don't want to go making more work for people. You want to make less work. You're more likely to create change if you bring a solution to the table. It might not be the final solution, and that's fine, but you need to show that you've been thinking about it, that you're taking your initiative, and that there are other ways to do it. I remember the first thing that I ever challenged within my workplace. I came with a solution. It wasn't the final solution, but the change was implemented, and it was implemented quite quickly because we realised that it was just a ticking time bomb for an error to happen and affect patient safety. So it had just been missed. It was just part of that Swiss cheese effect where it just fell through a couple of holes. People had probably noticed it before, but hadn't had the courage to speak up about it and to identify it as something that needed or could be changed. So it was the first time that I remember speaking to my mum. We were a big unit. I didn't necessarily have that much contact with her, but I just went up and I was like, I've noticed this and I'm really worried that this and this might happen. I think if we took this route, it might actually solve something. And she goes, oh, you're right, that could definitely be a problem. Literally a week later, her and her leadership team had come back to me and said, yeah, that we're actually going to change the practice and do it this way. She acknowledged that my solution was, thoughtful thinking, but it came from a place of being a novice nurse. You don't know what you don't know. But also acknowledged the fact that it was great that I had come with a solution. And I think that was the moment for me where I was like, oh yeah, we do need to be solution focused and create less work rather than more. Because, we're all overworked. We've all got huge workloads, whether we're bedside nurses or unit managers. So looking out for each other and taking some of that accountability and ownership of our own workplaces.
So we are almost at the end of the podcast, but I would like to ask you, Lucy, is there a nurse or a midwife that inspired you and you would like them to be invited in our next podcast?
That is a tricky question because at every stage of my career, I've had different people, multiple people who inspire me. So I'm very inspired by the women in my life who have challenged socio norms and cultural norms and have been fierce leaders. A special mention to my mum and my auntie AJ and my sister. My mum and my sister were both nurses as well, and they do different aspects of nursing now, not necessarily bedside nursing, which is really fantastic. And they were the first two that taught me that you could do that. My 3 supervisors for my PhD, they're so inspiring. I've got them. A team that is so complementary with different skills. They all bring either qualitative or quantitative or a mixture of both, and they challenge my brain to within an inch of its life. So I'm very lucky to have them and always inspired by them. My first ever next gen leadership team, we were young, fearless, and so keen to create change. And we are still 4 of the most diverse leaders, and doing such different but such amazing things, each one of them. So a special thank you to Caitlin, Ariella and Andrea for always being there with me and making all of this change happen, because without them I wouldn't be here today. Nothing that I have done has been something that I've done on my own. It's just been always with a huge support team. So in terms of people that I would love to see on this podcast, I'd like to see the current Next Gen chair, Caitlin, because she is just fantastic and she's so vibrant, and she's going to bring a whole new chapter to the Next Gen faculty, which is exactly what it needs. She'd bring some really different perspectives to what Australian nursing looks like. So there are just so many wonderful people out there that have made me who I am today. So I'm very thankful to a lot of people.
One last thing before I do the closing. People who heard you today, and especially student early career nurses and midwives, if they want to get in touch with you and more about your work, how they do that?
Yeah, there's lots of different ways to get in touch with me, which is really great. So I have an Instagram page, which is Aussie_nurses. Aussie is spelled AUSSIE. I'm pretty active on that in terms of replying to messages. I'm not an influencer by any means, so I post things that are relevant to what I'm doing and I reply to messages like that. But otherwise, you're welcome to reach out via the Challenges Committee and get my email, and I'm more than happy to reply to emails on here as well. So I would love to talk to people about my PhD or different aspects of my career so far. So I'm always open to mentoring too. I
think that's the best part of the next and early career leaders, that we are approachable in social media and very active. I think that was an inspirational conversation. Thank you for coming today here and giving us your time. Thank you, Aaron, for your co-hosting. And I think from white paper development, like to constitution reform, Lucy, you are a powerful reminder that advocacy isn't just about speaking up. It's about staying in the room, asking the right questions, and helping make change happen, which you demonstrated at multiple levels. If you're listening today and wondering how you can make an impact, start where you are. Grassroots leadership began with passion, collaboration, and the courage to challenge the status quo. To learn more about Lucy and the project she mentioned, check out the episode's transcript and speaker bio on the Grassroots website at thenursingnow.org. You will also find ways to get involved, access resources, and even nominate yourself or a colleague to be featured in the future episodes. And if you haven't already, we warmly invite you to sign up as a member of the Nursing Now Challenge. It's a free global community for students and early career nurses and midwives who want to lead, innovate, and make a difference in healthcare. You can join us at nursingnow.org and be part of something bigger. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time, keep pushing boundaries, keep building change, and keep your roots strong.
Grassroots is a production of the Nursing Now Challenge, a programme of the Burdett Trust for Nursing. All views and opinions expressed in this podcast are personal to the hosts and guests and are not necessarily the views of the Nursing Now Challenge or the Burdett Trust for Nursing. Please follow us or subscribe to this channel for more episodes. And for more information about the Nursing Now Challenge and this podcast, including upcoming episodes and featured speakers, head over to nursingnow.org.